This is the official breakdown for Vito the Skull Lograsso versus Stevie Richards at Band in the USA in London, Ontario, Canada, March the 2nd, 2013. I'm now being joined by Joel Gertner.
Hey, how are you?
Doing good, man. Doing really good.
Psyched up for this tournament, my friend. I can't believe it. It's like, what, 3.5 months away?
Yeah, I think we're within 100 days here, man.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. It's an unbelievably booked tournament. My hat's off to the championship committee with Hardcore Roadtrip because you guys have really outdone yourselves. And this match, I know probably I was supposed to have a prediction and a prognostication when we went over C.W. Anderson versus Blue Meanie. It's really a toss-up. I'll tell you what, more so than that match, this one that we're going to be talking about now is a real toss-up. I mean, if you can look at a tail of the tape for this thing, and like they are both over 6 foot tall. They're both probably about 6'2". They are both about 225, 230 pounds. They have matching reach, and even age-wise, they're both in their late 30s. I mean, it's just up and down. It's just when it comes to experience, they've both been in the business. They probably started in the business within a year of each other. So it's just there is literally no telling what's going to happen in this match.
Okay, man, so if you had to say, where does Vito hold an advantage in this thing? Because I've been hearing from a lot of fans. A lot of fans are saying Stevie Richards is the odds-on favorite to win this tournament.
Stevie Richards could be. He really could be. His conditioning is top-notch. It's par excellence. I mean, the guy, I've been saying it recently in calling his matches. He looks better, is in better shape every time out. Like I called his match this past weekend, and it was the first time I had called one of his matches, seen him wrestle in 5 months, and he looked 5 months younger than he looked the last time I saw him. So he's got unbelievable conditioning, unbelievable cardiovascular. These are two guys that they could wind up in the ring for half an hour, and I wouldn't be surprised. It's really going to be happening on March 2nd.
Okay, Joel, and what about Vito? You know, this guy, he's doing a lot of movies. He's got his own movie production company nowadays. I'm not sure how often he's stepping into the squared circle. Could that play a factor here?
He's not. The thing of it is, this is something special, and I think he realizes that, and he recognizes it. His primary income is not derived from professional wrestling. He doesn't need it to eat. He wrestles when it means something, and obviously Hardcore Road Trip and an opportunity to go for the Hardcore Road Trip Championship is something that means something, not just to everybody who's going to be there in attendance, watching on Internet pay-per-view and following it around the world, but for Vito himself, this is something that means something, and that covers some ground, because I can tell you as a wrestling fan growing up in Brooklyn, New York, that, Vito started in the business when I was about 14, 15 years old. It was 1990. He is a student of Johnny Robs, who is a WWE legend and Hall of Famer, and trained Devon Dudley and Bubba Ray, Tommy Dreamer, just countless others, just too many to name. Started in the business as Skull Von Crush. Now is going under the name Vito the Skull Lograsso. But by whatever name you want to call this guy, I mean, he was already 1 year in the business on WWF television as Von Krus, Vonkrus. And if you look for it, you'll find it. He actually wrestled Bret Hart for the Intercontinental title on Superstars.
Wow.
And appeared on many of the early episodes of Raw in 1993, taking on the likes of Big Boss Man, British Bulldog, Virgil, Typhoon, The Undertaker. He teamed with a wrestler named Al Smith, I think, against the Rockers. And he teamed with the legendary Iron Mike Sharp on one episode to take on the late Owen Hart and Coco Beware as High Energy. He's also wrestled for All Japan, and he spent 3 years wrestling for Carlos Colon in Puerto Rico. He has a pinfall victory over the late and legendary Mitsuharu Misawa. He worked Memphis and came to ECW and came back home to the Northeast and to America, and really had to scratch and claw and fight to get any kind of success there that he had. And I think he's looking to reprove himself and rededicate himself to showing that, this is now his time. These are two guys who now, after, over 20 years in the business each, Vito, and you could also say the same for Stevie, they never rest on their laurels. They always go out there on a mission with something to prove, leaving everything in the ring. And it's really, I can't wait to see how this unfolds.
Awesome stuff. Quite the history lesson there, Joel. Appreciate it. So let's just break this down. You said earlier you weren't quite sure it could go either way. Care to give a prediction?
Vito in recent years, he's like a wild card, because he has been wrestling. He's always out there. He never takes a full-time hiatus and spends too much time outside the ropes. In the last few years, Stevie Richards has been more active. He probably has more ring time in the last 2 or 3 years, especially you consider his run in TNA from 2009 to 2011, where he was wrestling, a lot of the old Extreme Championship Wrestling. I guess in TNA they were the EV 2.0 guys. So he's been on TV in recent years wrestling Rhino, Tommy Dreamer, Raven, Sabu. But Vito, because Vito might, I guess in that sense, have even more to prove than Stevie, I wouldn't necessarily give Stevie. I just, again, whether you look at like the conditioning, the experience, the actual metrics of the tail of the tape, the fact that Stevie started in 91, Vito started in 90, it's just so identical that with the nature of professional wrestling, I honestly, it's a pick'em, man. Honestly, for me to, you'd have to have a firearm for me to make a prediction on this one. I mean, aside from that, I can't do it.
Okay, man, and one thing we haven't mentioned yet, and we should touch on it before we wrap this up. Do you think the Kingpin will be ringside? Could he play maybe an X factor into this matchup?
It's an interesting question. I mean, Angel is definitely going to be there, and Big Vito was indeed a pivotal member of the Baldies faction in ECW. So Vito, in that sense, might have, he's going to have a friend there. And Stevie, because he is such a threat in this tournament, and just, Stevie might be more of an island. He might be kind of more going it alone. So I don't know. That's definitely an edge for Vito as well. So, yeah, that could play a role, and that could be a factor.
Okay, and another thing, I'm just coming up with these thoughts last minute here, man. A lot of fans seeing what's been going on with Raven and what's been going on with Stevie Richards and other promotions. Obviously, Raven is the commissioner of our company. Do you think that could play a factor into this matchup as well?
Lately, the way the two of them have been getting along elsewhere, and with Scotty just being, Raven just completely, I'll say this much, unless Raven feels that there's something in it for him, I can't even, to be blunt, let's put it this way.
Sure.
If Raven has an effect on this match, my prediction there would be that much like if Angel played a role, it would not be to Stevie's benefit. I think Raven, if he were to somehow in any way, shape, or form try to intervene, I also don't think that would be in Stevie's benefit.
Well, thanks for doing this, and we'll be back next week with another breakdown. Who will it be next week? We got 2 more matchups, man.
Oh, I don't know. I'll leave that in your capable hands. I'll leave that up to you. But all 4 matches are the kind of matches that, if you're going to any kind of independent wrestling show, if you want, all 4 of these matches would be right at the top of the card. They'd be main events anywhere. So, as a fan of wrestling, and specifically as a fan of wrestling tournaments, like all the way going back to the Wrestling Classic, WrestleMania 4, King of the Ring, Crockett Cup, as a fan of all of that kind of stuff, I think this is going to really live up to the bill and add itself to the history books in that regard. So I don't know which one's going to be next week, but man, I just can't wait for the tournament to come, to be honest.